Welcome to the 700 Club. The stock market has taken a nosedive, while consumer prices have spiked the most since 2008. Is a surge in COVID cases the culprit, or is something else driving this plunge in the market? What's the president's response to the economic freefall, and what does it mean to your wallet? Jenna Browder explains from Washington.
Yesterday, stocks skid as virus fears shook the markets. The Dow falling 2.1%, the S&P down 1.6% after setting a record the week before. In another sign of worry, over the past year, consumer prices have jumped 5.4%, the most since 2008.
We also know that as our economy has come roaring back, we've seen some price increases. Our experts believe, and the data shows, that most of the price increases we've seen were expected and are expected to be temporary.
At the White House, President Biden hit back at what he called doom and gloom predictions and defended his record on the economy.
6 months into my administration, the U.S. economy has experienced the highest economic growth rate in nearly 40 years.
Conservatives argue Biden inherited an economy already making a strong recovery from the 2020 COVID shutdowns. The president called on Congress to pass a $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure package aimed at fixing roads, bridges, and broadband.
We should be united in one thing: passage of the bipartisan infrastructure framework, which we shook hands on.
On Capitol Hill, Republicans and Democrats are battling over the details of that bill. They have until Wednesday to make it happen before Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer forces a Senate vote.
Well, we're still working on it. Chuck Schumer, with all due respect, is not writing the bill, nor is Mitch McConnell, by the way. So that's why we shouldn't have an arbitrary deadline of Wednesday.
Of greater concern is the $3.5 trillion social infrastructure plan, which pours federal dollars into entitlements like childcare, college tuition, and green energy initiatives. Republicans are solidly opposed to the plan, and economic experts believe it will harm the economy in the long run. Republicans stand unified in their opposition to the social infrastructure plan, and even some Democrats are expressing their concerns. The White House needs every Democrat vote to bypass the GOP and pass it through reconciliation. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
You know, folks, we all want infrastructure. We want good roads. We want the airplanes to fly appropriately. We don't want a bunch of potholes. We don't want bridges breaking and falling down. I mean, there are obviously some problems. So we've gotten the deal together, a bipartisan group has said, okay, we'll pass it. But the trouble is the Democrats want to slip along with this so-called budget reconciliation and put through an enormous package of social deals where these children are put into public schools, free tuition in colleges, all kinds of social spending, and the Green New Deal. And the American people don't want that. As somebody said, we didn't vote for socialism, and that's socialism. Well, anyhow, let's take a look at the stock market. CBN financial editor Drew Parkhill is with us right now. And Drew, look, is this a momentary pause in a bull market, or is this something more serious?
No, this is a momentary pause in a bull market. How long that pause is going to last, Pat, we don't know. The media was blaming it on COVID, and I knew they were going to blame it on something. I thought they probably blame it on the big spending bill, which they didn't. They said, oh, it's the rise in COVID cases. Well, they're not at that level yet. But, Pat, you know how the market works. I mean, the excesses have been building up. The Russell 2000, which I know you follow, which is smaller stocks for people out there in TV land, that's been going down for a while. So there was fewer and fewer stocks going up, and that's always a sign that you're going to have a drop. We did Monday. We may have some more sideways moves, wild up and down swings for a while. But longer term, the market's going to go up. It's not going to be a raging bull market necessarily, but it's going to keep going higher over the years ahead.
You have forecast the Dow is going to hit 10,000. What do you think?
100,000? Yeah, it's going to go before this is over. Now, this is down the road. This is not next week. This bull market will top out, and you can quote me on this, around 155,000 on the Dow, plus or minus 10,000 or 5,000 points, between 150 and 160,000.
So people are watching this. I mean, the market is funny. I mean, it's individual stocks. So
exactly.
You say stay invested or get out, or what?
No, I think longer term. I mean, I mean, you can have an ETF, which is basically the whole market, one stock like SPY or QQQ, or you can have individual stocks. I mean, it's up to everybody what they want to do. But longer term, the overall market's going to go higher. Individual stocks will have their own, ups and downs, but overall, the market's going to go higher, no question, depending on some of the problems we see out of Washington.
What about this crazy spending of trillions of dollars that Biden wants on so-called entitlements that'll never go away? What kind of impact will it have on the economy?
Bingo. That's a big problem. I want to look. Here's the problem, Pat. I've got a graphic I want to show in a second, but before I say that, I want to point this out. These programs, as you just said, they never go away. They become institutionalized. They become part of the government. So let's say the Republicans take the House next year and the Senate, and a Republican wins in 2024, 2028, whatever, and he wants to make some cuts to these programs that Biden and the Democrats want to create. The media will go crazy. The Democrats will go crazy. You'll hear the whole heartless Republican thing. So what you're going to have is bigger and bigger government and more programs. Now, I want to show you this quote from the Wall Street Journal yesterday talking about Biden's programs. Every new Biden program is a burden on the economy, reducing its natural market-driven ability to create high-paying jobs while entrenching state-run, impossible-to-kill zombie entitlements. That was an opinion column in the Journal yesterday, which really sums it up the way a lot of people are thinking. Because, Pat, the big battle in Washington now over this $3.5 trillion bill is not going to be Republicans and Democrats. It's going to be Democrats versus Democrats, because a lot of moderate Democrats are really worried about this big spending, and they're really worried about these taxes. Every time I turn around, I'm reading about a new tax increase they're talking about. And there's no way you can get all these and sustain an economy that would be as strong as it would be otherwise.
Drew, thanks for your insights. Drew Parkhill, our economics editor. And ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here, and I believe in what he says. Well, in other news, this is not your typical summer camp. The youth of Gaza are gathering in what are called killer camps run by Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And they're definitely not playing around like swimming and playing tennis and volleyball. These boys and young men are equipped with AK-47s, anti-tank weapons, and video simulations for target practice. And what's the goal of these youngsters? You guessed it, the annihilation of Israel. Chris Mitchell brings us this alarming story from Jerusalem.
They call them the Pioneers of Liberation and the Sword of Jerusalem summer camps, run by Hamas and Islamic Jihad. These videos, posted by Memory, the Middle East Media Research Institute, show what the youth of Gaza are doing this summer.
We did not come here to enjoy ourselves or to play or anything like that. We came with our souls, our blood, our martyrs, and are wounded to sacrifice ourselves for Palestine and for our people.
This promotional video urges students from primary school, high school, and college to participate. In the camp, target practice involves AK-47s, anti-tank weapons, and video simulations.
So that in the next phase, Allah willing, these boys will be able to confront the plundering enemy and disfigure its face in the next war.
In May, Hamas and Islamic Jihad called the 11-day war with Israel the Sword of Jerusalem. Their goal, preparing the next generation for the next war.
We say to the enemy, these children picked up these weapons, and we train them how to use them, as well as how to take security measures, so that they will follow in the footsteps of their fathers and take up arms, Allah willing.
I chose to spend my vacation in the Pioneers of Liberation summer camp in order to continue the path of my father, the martyred commander Walid Shamala Abu Bilal, and in order to strengthen our determination and to liberate Jerusalem, Allah willing.
These young men and boys learn anti-Semitism at an early age.
We asked Hitler why he left some of you alive. He did so in order to show us how wicked you are. We will come to you from under the ground and hammer fear into your hearts, and above the ground we will tear your bodies apart with our rockets. Scram into the shelters, you mice, you sons of Jewish women.
Memory has been monitoring these summer camps for 10 years.
The videos and images from those camps illustrate and reflect the way Hamas is operating and deepening its control. In 10, 15 years from now, the kids will be adults or parents and maybe even officials in Gaza and decision makers. So the extremism in Gaza will be even worse.
Hamas took over the Gaza Strip 13 years ago in a bloody battle with the Palestinian Authority.
So since birth, this generation has been raised only on the values of these terrorist movements. This is, of course, only deepening the crisis there, thwarting any chance for dignified, peaceful life for the kids and for all the residents of Gaza.
She feels the international community needs to speak up about these camps. While these kids are in camp, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh is visiting nations like Mauritania, pledging to continue the war against Israel.
Let me tell you, my brothers and sisters, the sword of Jerusalem will not be sheathed until the blessed Al-Aqsa Mosque is liberated.
Given these summer camps, it appears clear the goal is that the battle for Jerusalem will continue into the next generation.
Chris is joining us now from Jerusalem. Chris, let me ask you something. How can there possibly be a two-state solution when Hamas is building up such hatred toward Israel? There's no way that Israel can go along with something like that.
No, when you see something like this, Pat, a two-state solution seems like a dream. You said years and years ago it was the Chimera, and it's not just Hamas, Pat, it's also Fatah. If you look at some of their social media, they talk about annihilating Israel. They talk about taking over all of Palestine from the river to the sea, which means the elimination of Israel. So a two-state solution seems like a dream right now. When you see this indoctrination of the next generation, what struck me in our interview with that memory person that monitors this kind of recruitment and is that the next generation, think of it, 13-year-old kids in Gaza have never known anything but Hamas. And right now, in 10 years, 15 years, they're going to be the next generation making decisions in Gaza. And I don't think it's going to be a two-state solution, Pat. I think they're looking for a one-state solution.
You know, it looked like when those Abraham Accords were put through, they bypassed the PLO, just said, let's not even consider them. And how can any intelligent group of international statesmen consider Hamas and the PLO as anybody that should be allowed to engage in peace talks?
You would think, Pat, that the international community would be outraged about this. The UN would be outraged about this. Actually, UNICEF and part of the UN says that if you're recruiting kids under 18 or under 15, it's actually a war crime. So you would think that the international community would be outraged about this. And this goes hand in hand with some of the curriculum that they find in schools, many of them funded by the UN. And I would add, Pat, that one role that goes into this whole scenario is that when Hamas took over from the Palestinian Authority, they took over the Palestinian Authority in 2007. 2 years prior to that, that's when Israel withdrew, called a disengagement. They withdrew from all of these places. They had 8,500 Jews were living in 21 communities within the Gaza Strip, and we were there reporting on it. You remember that well, Pat. And it was supposed to bring peace, this disengagement. We remember a spokesman told us at the time, listen, we're the finger in the dike of terrorism. Don't pull us out. And since then, Hamas took over. And now for the last 14 years, this is what we've had more Hamas done, and now 4 wars in the last 14 years.
It was Sharon that forced those Jewish settlers out of that area. They actually uprooted them at the point of the gun and forced them to give up their property. Is that correct?
That's exactly what happened. This whole idea was Ariel Sharon's idea, along with many in the international community. The U.S. was supporting it as well. The whole idea was that if Israel has unilaterally pulled out of the Gaza Strip, there'll be peace. That's exactly what didn't happen. It's really become Hamas now. We were there at the border when they were evicting these 8,500 Jews out of these 21 communities. It was really, to my mind, one of the saddest chapters we've seen in the last 20 years here. And also, it goes to the lesson, Pat, when Israel pulled out of South Lebanon back in May of 2000, and then when Israel pulled out unilaterally in 2005 out of Gaza Strip. It filled the vacuum with Hezbollah on the northern border, Hamas on the southern border, and now we have episodes like in May, 11-day war, 4,300 rockets from Hamas and Islamic Jihad fired into Israel, supported by Iran.
Chris, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're told to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, but there's ever a time Israel is under assault throughout the nations of the world. And the United Nations and the so-called UNRWA, which should have been disbanded a long time ago, and now Hamas is a breeding ground for terror. But as I said some time ago, the Muslims believe in the Mahdi, the 12th Imam, and they do believe that ultimately before the Mahdi shows up, there's going to be a destruction of Israel, chaos. And that's what they believe in their hearts, and they're going to pursue it. And anybody who thinks that they're going to be brought to the peace table is just in a chimera. It's just crazy that anybody would think that way.